going to now brief you on the conduct of your annual tests. And this is complex in terms of how it's set up, but principally you'll be looking at this kind of arrangement, and this is what we're referring to as the base on which annual tests are taken. So 12 men can be tested at any one time from a single base, and you need to understand that we will set up directors to work out the angles from which the objects are being chosen, and there'll be a number of objects represented by the red asterisks that are chosen and then calculated by your instructors as to what angle they're from, so that we can understand the differences from zero. If you're on this line and looking at a angle up to 4 degrees, either left or right of the center, then we can calculate accurately the exact range, so that you are then able to be tested appropriately. So we will set up 6 directors, 30 yards base piece of rope. We'll have the base pegged in at these 3 points, and then we will have a stopwatch, because each detail of 12 men will take about 50 minutes to test, or maybe as little as 35 if a separate base is used for your adjustment. So 12 men can be cycled through 12 at a time. You might set up and adjust your rangefinders prior to the test, then bring them onto the base to have the ranges taken and to be examined. This base rope will be marked at 6 foot intervals with a piece of tape, and the directors will be placed appropriately. So we calculate the distances, let's say the right or left of arc, using the directors, and we're able then to set out the different positions and to work out accurately the ranges that you're taking. So we have a correction based on these two, and then using the directors, and then we can divide in proportion to the other positions that are taken, just in the opposite directions. So it can all be set up so that you are accurately taking your ranges to known objects, and this will happen once a year for you to maintain your qualification. This is in addition to the tests of elementary training that you've already done. So the actual annual test itself consists of 2 parts. The first is the reconnaissance test, as used in the attack, and then the second part is taking ranges for a defensive position. Immediately before the test, you'll be given an unlimited amount of time to set your instrument up and test it on ranges between 2,000 and 3,000 yards. There'll be a known range, and you'll be given that range for that object, so you will make sure that you will calibrate and adjust your instrument appropriately. Part 1, the object is to test the man's powers of recognition and ability to produce without delay reliable ranges on 2 natural objects which represent the position of their own troops and the enemy. The objects to be indicated verbally. So the officer conducting the test will give you the direction of which objects they are, using the correct fire control orders. The procedure is that 2 directors of the 6 we have available are laid on the objects representing the enemy at a range between 1,500 and 2,000 yards. Our own troops at a range between 1,000 and 1,500 yards. And there must be at least 200 yards between those 2 objects. So there'll be some gap, useful to note, but there'll be some gap between those objects. The objects must be approximately on the same line and reasonably easy to recognise and range on. So they're not going to be difficult objects to take ranges on. There's clearly no point setting you up for failure at this point, so they're going to be quite simple and easy objects to do. The men to be tested will set up their instruments on the testing site and stand up behind their instruments. So you'll form up on this baseline, and you will set up your instruments, and when you are ready, you will stand up and behind your instruments to indicate that you're ready. And then the officer conducting the test will indicate the 2 objects verbally, and before doing so, he will warn them warn you men that the indication will not be repeated. So you need to listen in. Make sure that you're listening. And any man who fails to recognise either or both objects from his indication may do so by means of the directors, but no extra time is being allowed. So you've got the two directors set up on the two different objects. The orders won't be repeated. So if you need to get up and check against the director the exact object that was being indicated, then you can do so, but you don't get any extra time for that. At the end of the indication, the men, you lie down behind your instruments and take the ranges without any further orders, and you have 3 minutes from the end of the indication. So if you haven't listened properly and you're not sure, you will lose significant amount of time on that first instance, 3 minutes to take those ranges. And on completion of the test, you will hand to the conducting officer the range to the enemy and your own troops filled in on the prepared slip. Then part 2 of the test is taking the ranges for a defensive position. The object of this test is to test your ability to obtain accurate ranges on a number of natural objects on the targets in front of you. And you transfer that detail subsequently onto a range card. There is a restriction in the time available, so again, it's a time test. 6 directors are laid on the objects with the following ranges. 3 between 1,500 and 2,500 yards, but not more than 1 over 2,000. 3 of them will between 800 and 1,500 yards, not more than 1 under 1,000 yards. And 2 of the objects will be natural objects without clearly defined vertical edges, such as a bush or a bank. And you know that from the previous lessons. It won't all be the edges of buildings or fence posts or telegraph poles or anything like that. Some of them will be indistinct objects. The remaining 4 may be artificial or natural objects with reasonably clear defined edges, such as walls, telegraph poles, etc. The objects will be given appropriate descriptions which will be attached to the directors. So each director will have the description of the object that it is laid upon. And then you will make sure that your instrument is set up on the testing site accordingly along the base. You will be given the opportunity to recognise each object and make necessary notes, and you then stand up behind your instrument. So as those objects are being indicated to you, make the notes on the graph that you're preparing, and then that is how you will be presenting your ranges as well. So on the order to begin, you will obtain the ranges to each of the objects, and you select a setting ray within the arcs, and on the conclusion of the time limit, you hand in your results, tabulated as follows. So you don't need to draw the full range card like we've previously learned in the lessons, but you need to tabulate your results accordingly. Including underneath, you'll need to make sure that your name and your unit are written on the slip that you hand in. And you have 20 minutes to complete that. You'll then be marked, and the marking for part 1, to get 10 points, you must be within 20 R squared for each of the ranges. For 5 points, you must be within 25 R squared, and you will score minus 5 points if you are more than 35 R squared. For part 2, you must be within 15 R squared for 10 points, 25 R squared for 5 points, and if you are more than 35 R squared, it will be minus 5 points. There's a possible 80 points available. You will be classified as follows. First class, 65 points and over. Second class, 50 points and over. And failed will be under 50 points. So if you score under 50 out of 8, you were considered failed at the test. If you score first class or over, that is the point at which you receive your trade qualification. Second class and failed range takers will be given an opportunity for a retest on a subsequent date. So you get another opportunity to do it, but clearly you don't want to be doing that. You want to be passing first time. So that is how it will work, and you're now ready to undertake those annual tests.
Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. Please support us on Patreon if you're able to, and let us know of anything you'd like to see in the future. I look forward to hearing from you.